Hey, all, Scott here. Well, I'm back at it, and just thought I'd touch base again, show you that wonderful sort of glitchy piston action that I ran into when I was building the grind bed on the Sevastopol. Yeah, that was quite entertaining, I thought. Anyway, while I'm talking about this, I do have to mention I wasn't able to get a video last week due to family commitments and work commitments with regards to the holiday season, Christmas parties, getting drunk, etc., etc. Which I'm sure most of us are feeling the pinch right now, especially if you haven't done your Christmas shopping yet. Nevertheless, this will also be an announcement in the sense that I will be done making videos for the 2014 year. I will start again the second weekend in January. Again, just to allow me to deal with the pressures of the holiday, family commitments, travel, and all that other wonderful stuff that comes with this season. Anyway, let's get back into the Space Engineers. So as my attempts to go forward with this grind bed idea, I was kind of happier with the grind bed, however that broken piston kind of agitated me a bit. I have noticed that rotors and pistons tend to be very unstable in a lot of ways, and it's unfortunate. I hope at some point Keen will be able to fix them to the point where they're a little more reliable, because I did try a few other things with pistons and rotors in this video, or in the build of the Sevastopol here, the retrofit, which still ran into more and more issues. Like that grind bed I spent a lot of time on trying to get something that would easily consume small ships in the field so that this ship could support some of the other ships my friends were building. Like we have the Sevastopol from the last episode, which was kind of the quote-unquote destroyer of our fleet. And the Dude and Tyson.Powered both have their ships. They're smaller fighters that they tend to like to favor. So we needed something that would keep us out in the field longer so we weren't spending a whole bunch of time just basically trying to play tow truck and hauling things back and forth as we've kind of done in the past. The San Polo, which kind of got docked here, was more or less that role. It was another sort of smaller ship that I was using to capture and recover, and then basically just pull stuff back home, and then recycle it there. But as we went on, I decided I wanted something that was a little bigger, a little bit more of a support role than some of the stuff we've had right now. And right now I'm just relocating the gravity generator. As you can see, we dug it out from the bottom there prior, and I needed a new location for it because I was doing some changes to the bottom of the ship. So I found this little spot underneath these stairs, and I think that actually worked out pretty well. And I just kind of translocated it and moved on. So a lot of the interior has changed in the Sevastopol as well, as you can see. I'm starting to use a lot more azimuth parts and things like that. We also finally got our huge solar array done for the space station. Credit to this goes to Raven Knight. With this, it can actually support all of the space station's power requirements without the additional use of reactors or batteries, so long as we're not running all of our refiners and assemblers at the same time. So that really helps. Plus, it's also kind of handy because we have a lot of our support ships now are starting to be strictly battery run. So they don't actually have uranium reactors in them, they just run off of batteries when they need. And as you can see, he's built an entire sort of column that goes all the way down, that's all batteries, and then at the bottom you can kind of see this little control center that he put in just to kind of be aesthetically pleasing, as well as a gravity gen that's going to go in there at some point. And yeah, that's just kind of a great way to kind of store a lot of power in a station that we've been using, and that's one thing we always need is power. Back to the Sevastopol, I decided to make the grind bed a little bit larger, mostly because I found that the size it was worked, but I mean some of the ships that we consume are all sort of classified as large ships, so therefore you want, I was going to run into some problems of having to cut them up in the field a little bit more, so I had the room on the back of the Sevastopol, I decided to make it a little bit larger, so I added another row of grinders down either side of it to try to support it. Plus I'm also welding up more stuff inside the small side of the ship here. Got gyros and things like that, and using the scalpel here to try to nose it in, and that's where that one little weld in the front comes in handy. As you can see, what I did here was I extended the nose a little bit just so that I could kind of sneak it in there. And these pistons came in handy, and I've had problems with pistons, however, if you don't put a lot on them, I've found that they tend to work a little bit better, or put a lot of weird pressure on them. Again, though, they do need to be addressed at some point, and I'm sure they will in time as time goes on. So we've had some kind of interesting things over the last couple of weeks that I'll talk about. Keen has, I think I mentioned in this last video, has decided that they were going to start asking for community support with regards to the exploration expansion that they're building, or the exploration edition, whatever the term is. And they needed like community developed content, ships and things to populate this this traveling universe with. So they made a call out, and a lot of people submitted stuff, and I even submitted the Sevastopol MK1 because everything had to be stock. So this first Sevastopol, or this ship before we started the retrofit, was all built in vanilla. So I did all that, and I submitted that for the survival. I don't know if it'll get accepted or not. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? If you are watching this, I will put a link to it in the workshop. So if anyone's interested in collecting it or using it for their own games, by all means, maybe give me a like and a support. So maybe it will get in the game. And again, I'm not sure if it's too late at this point. This video is going to come up, but Keen was asking for more ships. This time they're looking for small fleets, like ships that have similar markings and colors and designs and sort of design aesthetics to kind of make it look like factions in space. So if you come across a space station, it'll have, you know, support craft that are sort of the same, kind of like what they do in the survival starts with the small blue ships. They're all the same blue with the same white sort of markings, and the blue ships and red and whatnot. So they're looking for something like that. Again, if you're interested, just go to. I'll put a link to the forum post in my comments, or my description. Excuse me. And you know, there's a list of criteria that you have to follow. So make sure you check that out. Things like no mods permitted. Things like you know, reasonable amounts of turrets and or weaponry. You got to keep a triangle limit in consideration too, which I won't get too much into, but you know, you can't make your ships so ridiculously large that they lag out the game when someone's trying to load it in. Again, check it out if you're interested, by all means. Getting back to this, I decided to try a piston lid, and using 2 pistons, and these are advanced collectors from one of the mods I've got. I think it's Advanced Conveyors. Includes it. And they're basically collectors with more access doors on them, which makes it a little easier to use. They actually collect from side to side. And here's a nice beauty shot of Sevastopol as she currently sits with the lid on it. That lid does get tweaked a little bit because you can still see there's a lip, and I've got to do some work on the back to make it look a little bit more aesthetic. But the idea is that it would raise and lower to sort of push pieces down into the grinders. It's tied to a sensor to prevent the pistons from pushing straight down on it without stopping, because that's kind of why I kind of figured my last piston attempt kind of blew off and went crazy, was because I was just putting pressure down on it and it somehow broke the top of it, which in fact released all that kinetic energy or something like that. If you've ever done any physics programming, you might understand a little bit more of what it's done, but I'm not going to go into the details of what I kind of guessed it to do. Alright, so we're continuing forward here, and with regards to this game, like I've been noticing that some people have really been complaining about issues with regards to persistence universes, things like ships disappearing, stuff of that nature, random deaths, and a whole slew of like issues that are really breaking of the experience. And it's unfortunate, because I really would like to see a lot more of this kind of stuff persistent, and especially when I get into the exploration. That'd be kind of cool to actually come across the occasional player and in a scenario and have to deal with them depending if they're friendly or hostile. Nevertheless, I am still trying to attempt to get a persistent server going here for me and my friends. If all goes according to plan, it should be up hopefully fairly soon, within the next few days before Christmas. We'll see. I'll keep you guys posted, let you know what's going down. If anyone is interested, again, I am willing to bring more people in if they are interested. Right now it's a friendly survival, so it's not like we're competitive or anything, but that could change in the future, who knows. Alright, another beauty shot of Sevastopol as we go for a round. As you can see, the grind bed is developing, as well as the sides are getting filled in with more material, and the nacelles are getting more fleshed out, and the nose is getting more complete. And I took a look at that nose, and I do know I wanted that maglock sort of tractor beam on the front, because I am going to be using the Sevastopol to arrest hulks of ships that we capture. But that nose needed some work, and I wanted to put something else there, and we'll get more into that later, so it does change drastically as we go here. I am also using these armor rams by Uncle Stu, S-T-U, I think that's how you pronounce it. And they're kind of cool. They work like heavy armor, but they're 1x2 ramps and 2x2 ramps and 3x1 ramps. Just different kinds of ramps and angles that you can add more interesting shapes to your ship. They do tend to get destroyed outright rather than deform like standard armor blocks, but still, they do provide the same amount of protection before they disappear, which I find is kind of cool. Plus, they also have the added bonus, so they don't actually destroy things like deformed blocks do, sometimes on the inside, which could be pretty devastating depending on what you're trying to do. In a survival mode, I mean, you spend a lot of time just repairing everything, so you don't really want a high-maintenance vehicle. That tends to be an issue. So, in redesigning the nose of the Sevastopol, I wanted something different. I didn't just want to put more guns or more things that generate holes in them. I did want to kind of create a tool or a device or something that would support the smaller fighters. You know, my first thought was some kind of a mass driver. Basically throw space stone at stuff to act as countermeasures to turrets and things of that nature, because right now the turrets in the game will shoot at just about anything that moves that's not attached to them, including your friends. So I decided to try to build some kind of a mass driver, and as you can see here, I'm using a large number of gravity gems that are going to be kind of concentrated into a small spot, and this will just huck small stones that ships were trying to capture. And I wasn't sure if this idea was going to work. Nevertheless, I wanted to try it, because again, I wanted to try some new things. And I did design sort of a inventory container that could drop, or fill with stone, and then it would just drop it out of a conveyor into the gravity field, which would then throw it, and it needed to go at enough of a speed to exit out the front of the Sevastopol, even at high speed, and not get jammed up in there and cause problems. So I wanted to give this a try. As you can see here, we've got the gravity field sort of lined up, and I go in there and turn off the jetpack to see what it does. It does throw me pretty good. I did think that was kind of fun. As you can see here, I've got Albin hanging out with me here, and he's going to demonstrate. You can see he just went whizzing out like a watermelon seed. So I figured, you know, that might work pretty good. Try it with some stone and see what happens, really. So Albin, the human cannonball, going out for a ride. So the next step is to start filling it with stone and see what happens. As you can see here, it did work, and I was launching stone at a regular pace. I put this little wall up just to test it. It was kind of getting deflected and back at the Sevastopol, which I didn't think would be a huge issue, but it wasn't really damaging the armor, so I was like, oh, well, maybe this won't work as good as I thought, because I wasn't sure if this was going to be able to do any damage in the first place. I actually thought it might be kind of devastating, but it turns out it wasn't. At least not in the quantity of stone that the conveyors drop regularly. So I decided to do another test. As you can see, I've got the Sampolo out here. I'm just quickly fixing a little bit of damage that I found on it. This is a good little workhorse of mine. It did work very well for the time that I did use it. And then what we're going to do is take the nose, and we're going to put a conveyor on the nose to see what happens there. So now with the Sampolo, we'll put a conveyor on it. We'll try this idea out, see what happens, and that way I'm not going to invest a huge amount of time and effort in the Sevastopol if the system is worthless. A lot of trial and error in this game. I do like the idea as the game develops and the mods that have come out with it from the great modding community. There's a lot of more options and things to play out with. It's starting to go down the road of Minecraft, which I did enjoy a great deal back in the day. Gosh, I'm making myself sound old here, but you know, a few years ago I was big into Minecraft. I kind of got tired of it in the sense that seems like I was always rebuilding everything, and a lot of people that I were playing with were always getting me to do all the really tough stuff. Like I remember building a small town, or I remember building once upon a time a small town that we supported with a nuclear power plant using, it was industrial tech mod. So me and another guy spent, you know, a number of hours building this entire town with subterranean sewers to run power lines and all this kind of stuff to give everybody who had a plot in the town power. And the system worked, but the town really didn't develop because by the time we were done it, everyone else was moving on to other things. It's like, oh, well, whatever. This I kind of like because, you know, you can make a ship and make it your home and make it your own, or you can make a space station, whatever you want to do, right? And right now we're kind of sedentary in our little systems because of the, you know, we don't really have asteroids out beyond a certain point, but I really am looking forward to the exploration, and hopefully by then the Sevastopol will be a great support ship to focus on everything here. So this is the test with the chucking of rock as we're doing it. That mining carriage still has turrets that it's firing. I didn't get all this on video because we had a bit of a loss of footage, but you can kind of see that all the stone I'm pitching around, it does kind of fly around, but it did create a bit of a hazard. And I don't know if the gun was shooting at the rock or something else until I took it out. And, you know, it did seem to be okay. But this sort of, you know, capturing was one of two false things. I actually bumped into the ship there because I was trying to grab it because my mag locks weren't on yet. Some weird little glitch where I have to actually turn them off and on before they'll start to capture things. But anyway, the rock idea worked. But again, we got into the same problem I had before where it didn't work well enough. And for the amount of investment I was doing in it, it didn't seem like it was a good idea. And there was a couple other ideas I wanted to try. So I'm just grabbing pieces here, and the Sevastopol did great for... I love this little ship. I mean, it worked great for what we had for when we were capturing things. I did this capture all by myself, and I blew it into three pieces, or three major pieces amongst a bunch of little debris, and I, you know, with the way I've set up the tractor beams or the maglock surfaces on it. Again, that is a mod that you will find in the description of this video. I was able to capture all three pieces and bring them home. Basically recovering most of the ship. Just coming in for rear capture. I really do like some of these mods. That was really cool. Alright, now just arresting it. You hear some banging because there's a piece in the middle of that leg assembly that's bouncing around a bit. It wasn't actually bouncing off my ship. I had Albin with me here giving me a hand. So we're just going to pull the uranium out of these so that the ship doesn't fight us on the way home. And I can put the uranium in something else. I found that when you're grinding out these things, sometimes with reactors and refineries and assemblers and all those kinds of things, if there's stuff in them, a grinder won't pick them up and put it in the inventory like it does with containers. It just drops them into space or destroys them. So we've kind of gotten into the habit with some of the more valuable commodities like uranium to collect it out of the refineries before we actually grind them up. Which works out pretty well. All being said, so now we're just going to point ourselves to the home and give her some gas and go. Alright, and we're just going to flick ahead here to when we get more or less home. And then I'm going to test the Sevastopol's grinding bed here with these pieces once I can get it into place. Now, it may look like I'm kind of a little drunk at the helm, but really what it is when you're flying with a whole bunch of additional mass attached to you with landing gears or maglocks, whatever the case may be. You know, it pulls your center of mass off whenever you thrust. And that gets a little weird to drive. Nevertheless, it's no big deal. So I'm just lifting the lid here, and I got Albin giving me a hand with this. So now we're just going to test out the grind bed piston assembly lid close down mechanism, whatever, I haven't really officially named it. We brought back the mining chunks just so I could do it, and that's why I grabbed all of them. Going to use Tugger to kind of move them into place. I did design later that this ship would be carrying some kind of drones as well. The Sevastopol would carry drones that would assist with the capture, recovery, and or recycling of ships that we do capture. So Tugger is going to step in the mean term just to give me a quick hand to test this sucker out. However, that job will be replaced by ships that are going to be carried on the Sevastopol here in the near future. So I got Albin just releasing some of the pieces around the Sevastopol. Then I can move them in there and just see where we go. There we go, I got a chunk of it now. Now this is kind of tricky, moving it into position and making sure that it kind of fits in the grind bed. I may, like I said, my designs are works in progress. They're never truly finished. That's why after a certain amount of time has passed, I will upgrade again, I'm sure. And that's why a lot of my ships have Mark IIs, Mark IIIs, Mark IVs, or sometimes get renamed in the process, which I'm later told is bad luck if you rename a ship, if you subscribe to nautical sort of superstition. Nevertheless, I was told that I was suggested by one of my friends that I should rename the Sevastopol since its role has changed drastically since the original ship design. And another friend of mine said that's a bad idea because that's just bad luck. And I'm like, well, renaming a ship is bad luck according to the superstition. So I wrestled with the idea a little bit. I ended up deciding not to rename it because then I'd have to rename my whole video series as well. And everything else. So I didn't end up changing the name. But, you know, if I end up drastically changing the Sevastopol in the future, again, I might consider another name change. It just all depends on what we do. As you can see, when I'm moving stuff around with the mag locks, they work great, but occasionally when they bump things or things get in the way, they tend to sometimes grab onto the Sevastopol instead of the chunk. So you gotta, it is kind of a strange ballet to get this to work. And that's kind of what I was going for, was just kind of to go vertical and push this ship down. And now that the thing is let go and the ship is more or less stable, we can push the piston lid down and see if this works. Now, again, as it touches the grinders, if there's something there, a sensor will shut the pistons off so that it doesn't put a lot of pressure on it. It's actually working really well. I'm quite happy with it. As you can see, as soon as it gets close to something, it stops. And I mean, it moves around a little bit, so it is going to need a little bit of assistance from other ships to kind of keep the hulks that I put in it stable so they don't float around, because as you can see, it's starting to fall over to the one side, which could present a bit of a problem with me severing it on the side of the side walls of the grind bed, which I'm using advanced, excuse me, not advanced, but blast doors. They're type of blast door mod that added a whole bunch of other angles, squares, and a few other sort of shapes that kind of give you a little bit more of a clearance. That's why the lid of this piston assembly can go right into it without sparks or deforming, because most of it is built with blast door parts, which really helps when they don't deform for stuff like this. So in anywho, as you can see, the sensor is right there. I'm just coming to check it to make sure that it still works, and I'm just tweaking it a little bit because I was having some minor issues. But now you can see it's sort of being consumed again, and the piston's a little more aggressive in bringing it down. It does bounce a little bit, so either I have to slow the pistons down or do something, and I realized that, yeah, this is going to crush it, break a chunk off it. So I attempt to grab it with tugger to save it. I don't think I saved it all because a lot of bits started to fall off, and I think something blew out and things. But I did grab, yeah, you can see there was a big container in there that I got 8, and then I got another large container falling out the side of it, which I think ends up breaking out. I have to recover it. Nevertheless, it is working, and yeah, you can see there was some sparks flying and some bits broke off. So, test. That's part of the reason we do these things, is to find problems. I did want to put most of this test into this video in terms of just to show you what happened as a result. All that I cut out here was just a little bit of me collecting the parts that had fallen out and then bringing them back in and bringing this back down. And ultimately I wanted to make sure the lid would come all the way down and nothing would be left inside there. Like there wouldn't be anything bouncing around or causing any potential issues. And the other perk of this is I can bring the lid down with the grinders all the way done, and they don't eat the blast doors. That was nice. That was a nice little surprise with this design. I didn't think I could get those blast doors that close with the grinders would probably start to eat them. Nevertheless, it worked just fine, and of course, you know, Tugger took a shot to the face like he always does whenever we start doing these crazy things. He always seems to get beat up in the nose. Broke his nose a couple of times. Now again, doing just a little bit more testing with the last few pieces from that ship that we captured, just testing it out, seeing, make sure it works. Worked out beautifully. I really did like this idea, and I was going to stick with it. I'm going to spoil the surprise though, but I ended up having, again, instability problems with pistons, and this lid eventually broke off a couple of times, because I broke off once, I fixed it, and then I broke it off again. And I kind of gave up on the idea of the lid, until pistons are more stable. I just can't seem to get them to stay stable in a multiplayer environment. It might have worked just fine if this just stayed a space station, but the minute I turn the Sevastopol back into a ship, the lid breaks off and all that kind of stuff. So, unfortunately, it was another beautiful idea, but it didn't quite work. However, at this point, we also got another toy from Keen. Now, this is a couple weeks ago now, 3 or 4 weeks ago now. Projectors were introduced. Now, what a projector does is it allows you to take a blueprint, project it in the world, and then build it like we are doing here. As you can see, this red ship was the Baron, and then a buddy of mine made it was a fighter that he designed specifically to fly in the Sevastopol, to ride in its base. It's a light scout attack vehicle. It doesn't do much other than harass and bug out. But it was a good vehicle design we were using, and this was our first experimentation with projectors. I've since come to use them a bit more, and as you will see in later episodes next year, we start to use projectors extensively to increase the Sevastopol's functionality out in the field, our space station's functionality, and things of that nature. And Sevastopol is coming along beautifully. I was kind of hoping I could end the year off with a video of it being complete, and trust me, it's beautiful. It is a thing of beauty. Nevertheless, just with the commitments and stuff that are going on, just to reiterate, I will be away from video making until the new year. Probably second or third weekend in January, probably second weekend. I think I'll try to make sure that I got something out there. I'm also going to be looking into doing some other shows besides Let's Plays of just my Space Engineers game. I'm in talks with another YouTuber to do some joint stuff, and just try to get some stuff. So if anyone has any suggestions of stuff, I'm also looking for projects to do, like my gaming chair. If just stuff that I like to do in my spare time. And as you can see here, me and the dude were just playing around with welders to see if I could get them to build the entire ship inside the Sevastopol, and we'll see what happens as it goes, because the Sevastopol's functionality does change quite a bit because of the projectors. It was designed to sort of support the other vehicles. And like I said, so I'm going to take the opportunity now, because all this video is going to close out. This is us building the Baron. I want to wish everybody a happy holiday season, regardless of why you celebrate the holidays. And I expect, enjoy the time with your families and eat lots of food and be merry. We will be back in the new year, and hopefully there'll be lots of good stuff coming around, because 2015 is looking to be an interesting year for me. And yeah, so I'm going to call it around here and say this is Scott Cook signing off. We'll see you next year. You guys have a good one. Goodbye.